What's going on YouTube? West Hobbies RC. So today we are going to go over how to assemble your T-Rex 470L head. Now this is an LP kit, but we are doing the LM conversion kit. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and tear this head down, or tear it apart, get the blades off, get the head off of the main shaft, and then I will set the camera up and show you how to completely disassemble the head and how to completely reassemble the new head. Now, if you are just using to do a feathering shaft, it's going to be the same thing. If you're not, you're staying plastic and you're not going to metal, everything I'm about to do is the same regardless if it's plastic and or metal. So I'm going to go ahead and get the camera set up on a tripod and be right back. All right, so we have the head pulled off the helicopter. Just took the little Jesus bolt out of the middle here and loosened one on each side of these little arm bolts here. So now, like I said, everything I'm going to do for switching to the LM is going to be the same if you have an LP and you're just trying to take the head apart and assembly wise. So we have the head here. The feathering shaft bolts are going to be a 2mm. There's going to be one on each side. Now, a quick way, if you want to check after a crash if you have a bend, is take one 2mm driver and just turn the feathering shaft. If you see the blade grip jumping, you have a bent feathering shaft. Way to do it without taking it apart. So now we're going to pull the head apart. So we're going to have two 2mm drivers, one on each side. So what I like to do is grab it like this, grab the other one in my hand, and twist. And of course, everything is Loctited, so you're going to have to pop it apart. One, of course, is always going to come out, and the other one will always stay in. So now upon disassembly of this head, make sure we got the bolts all the way out. Okay, so now we have the bolt all the way out. So now upon disassembly, we're just going to pull it apart like this. So now we'll set the head block aside. So as you see come off, we're going to have a little flat washer, which goes towards, so I'm going to assemble this way. Let me move where you guys can see this. So I'm going to assemble everything out like this, so it's an exploded diagram, so you guys can see it no problem. Okay, so we have first washer, and you're going to have a bearing. And then we have the bolt, which we'll take apart in a second. Come off there. All right. So now we're going to have the thrust bearing. We have to get the other side out. See, come on, thrust bearing race. We have the race in there. All right, so let's get the race out, which is right here. So we have our thrust bearing. We have a race in here. Trying to get out. Here we go. Okay. And then we have another bearing, so I'll go ahead and just assemble this back together for you so you can see what I'm doing here. Okay, so we have our flat washer, which goes against the head block, and we have a bearing, which is a blade grip bearing, and then another blade grip bearing, and then there is a little shim here, and then the outside or inside, I guess it would be the inside race, thrust bearing race, and then the thrust bearing, and then the outside thrust bearing race, and then the feathering shaft bolt. So this is how it's going to be assembled into the blade grip itself. So now our blade grip we can set aside. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our metal blade grip. Now if you guys were just replacing this with a plastic, you grab your new plastic and assemble it this way. So now we're going to set our feathering shaft bolt out of the way. So the way I do it is this way. I'm going to put the bearing in the blade grips first. Let's just go ahead and slide our bearings inside. I like to use some kind of a driver to help push the bearing into place. With it being metal, sometimes you have to warm them up a little bit to get them to expand to slide it in a couple different ways. So we're going to set this little washer aside for now. So now I'm going to go ahead. Next thing I'm going to put in is the shim, the thin shim. That guy is going to drop down in the head or into the blade grip. Again, use a driver to make sure that you get it down in there flat and nice there. And then I will go ahead on another driver. I'm going to assemble. Now, I just took this helicopter apart, so the bearings are still greased. If you have not greased them, you should grease your bearings, but I just did the head on this helicopter not that long ago, less than 10 flights ago. So now the way we're going to do it is we're going to do our outside or inside towards the race that goes towards the blade grip. And now if you look, it says out on it. I don't know if you guys can see that. I don't think so. But it says out on the actual race. So this is going to be the outside. So think of this as the bolt for the feathering shaft, the outside race. And then your thrust bearing So the thrust bearing has two sides. You have a open side and you have a closed side. We're going to do the closed side towards the feathering shaft bolt. Open side towards the head block. The inside bearing race. And then now we have this whole thing. Let me just change drivers for a second. So now we have this whole thing assembled. Again, outside towards the blade grip bolt or feathering shaft bolt. Inside race towards the head block. So now we're going to grab our blade grip and we are just going to insert the whole thing into the blade grip like this. And we are going to tap down. And now we have all of our bearings are inserted into the blade grip. And this blade grip is completely done and ready to go on the feathering shaft itself. But now we're going to gently set this blade grip aside and do the same. And again, remember, don't forget your little washer that goes onto the feathering shaft. So we're going to set that again like that. And we're going to move this plastic one. And then we're going to set our bolt like this so we have an exploded diagram of how it goes. So now we're going to take the other side of this apart. So now we need to get, because we're changing the head block too. Again, if you guys are not doing the conversion, it doesn't matter. We need to pop our head dampener out. Let's set our head block aside. So now we're going to put the head dampener like this. And then we need to get this side apart. Put that dampener up there in the corner. You guys can see all the way I'm stacked. Actually, you know what? Let me do it like this. Make it easier for you to see. There we go. So now can you see? Okay, you can see that good. So now we have bolt, feathering shaft bolt, blade grip that we just assembled, shim, head dampener, head block, head dampener. And then feathering shaft is going to come out now. And again, we're going to do this one the same way. So we're going to take our shim, put it there. We don't need to take this bolt off here or this side of the race because this is going right back into the helicopter. So then we are going to knock this side apart like this. Get that out of there. We need to get the bearing race out and the bearing. So let's just gently push those out. And there it is out. And then let's gently get this guy out. So now our blade grip is empty. Set it aside. We do need the arms though. We are going to need these for doing the LM metal head grips. And we're going to need the bearings out of here, which I'll explain in a second. Okay, so now we have this back. Don't know what you're doing. It's going to look bad. We're going to take our bolt, set it aside for the blade. So now we're going to take our bearing. Now these bearings are the same size. Some helicopters, the bearing thicknesses are different, and that matters which way they go. On this helicopter, it does not. So we're just going to put one bearing in here. We are going to take our other bearing, put it down in here. Now, if you have a lot of flights on your helicopter, right now would be a great time to re-bearing everything, but this helicopter does not. So again, we have a shim here. So that shim is going to go ahead and drop down in here first. Again, gently make sure it's all set down there. You don't want to bend the shim up. So we made sure everything is pushed down inside of there. And then we're going to take our race. Now, this is going to be the inside. And now we're just going to go ahead and assemble it onto the feathering shaft since our outside thrust bearing race is there. Again, I already just greased these bearings. If you have not, I would recommend greasing them. So now we're going to slide this in. Again, closed side towards the feathering shaft bolt. Down, take your inside race. Again, they are marked inside. Too hard to see, but inside and outside. So this is inside. So now we have it assembled like this. So we have feathering shaft bolt. We have little washer that goes on the bolt. And then we have the outside thrust bearing race. We have the inside thrust bearing closed side towards the bolt. And then we have, let me see if I can zoom this in a little bit or make this visible. Okay, here. So now if you look, it says inside. And then this one will say outside on it, but it's underneath that washer. And again, thrust bearing closed side towards the feathering bolt. Oh, there's the out right there. Open side towards the blade grip. So we're going to push this together. Okay, so now we're going to take this and we're going to slide this. Again, our washer is, our little shim is down in there, as you can see. And we are just going to assemble this together, slide it through nice and easy. Make sure that bearing is pushed. And then now we are going to take this and we're going to set this aside. And we are going to use a little bit of grease when we go to put this back together. Let's focus. Okay. So now we have the head block. What do we do? So now I'm going to grab a little bit of grease. So that way it's not, you're not putting the feathering shaft in dry. You don't want to do that. So I'm going to take a little bit of grease. I get asked what kind of grease I use all the time. This little Aquacraft speed grease. I've had this thing for years and it works. This grease works great. Absolutely love this grease. I use it on all my helicopters. Works great. So now we're just going to take a little bit of grease. Just, you don't need a lot. We just need a little bit here. Rub the dampeners so they don't go in. You don't want them to go in dry. And then we're just going to push the dampeners in. And we're going to do the same on the other dampener. Again, you just don't want them to go in dry, so just a little bit of oil or a little bit of grease on them. Everybody has their own method of what kind of grease they use. Whatever works for you is great. I'm not the kind of person that tells you you have to do this or you have to do that. If you have a grease that works great for you, then use it. So now we're going to assemble this. Now be careful when you are assembling your shafts, your main or your feathering shaft, that you do not get any grease down inside of the feathering shaft bolt hole. Do not get any grease in there because that's what you need clean for Loctite. If you feel like you got grease in there, you can clean it out with some rubbing alcohol. So now we're going to take a little bit of this grease and we're just going to rub the feathering shaft with a little bit of grease. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to shake you guys. And then we're going to take our 2mm driver, put it on your one end here. Now we have this all assembled. We're going to take our head block and we're just going to gently push the shaft through. And again, we have the little washer. We're just going to gently spin the shaft through, making sure we don't get no grease in that hole. Just like that. And then push, making sure that's clean and good. Push this together like so, slide, and now this side of the head is assembled. It's going to be all greasy, but we can clean that off later. Then we are going to take our neck shim. We're going to slide that on. We are going to take and carefully, gently slide this together because we do not want to knock all these bearings loose. And then now, all we have left to do is slide a bolt in. So now what I like, grab yourself a little bit of rubbing alcohol on a paper towel, take your feathering shaft bolt, and I just like to clean the bolt off, run it through, make sure the bolt is nice and clean. So now we're going to go ahead, take our Loctite. Remember, Loctite everything. Just put a little dab on the bolt. We don't need a ton because we don't want it to run over. And a lot of times you can put Loctite in the feathering shaft itself. That'll help stop it from running out. But if you do it just a tiny bit, you will be fine. So now we are going to go ahead and insert and start to thread it in. Get it to the point to where it starts spinning. Okay, so now it's spinning. So now we're going to grab our other 2mm driver, get it on the other side, and remember to turn the one, which is this side, and we are going to just turn and tighten it down. And we don't want to go too crazy. But now it's tight and torqued down, and the head is smooth. That's the important part. You want to make sure it is smooth. See, nice and smooth. Blade grips will go where you want them. No notchiness. So now the head itself is assembled. So now there's another thing. If you are doing the LM, make sure when you pull this out of the box, these are not Loctited. The little ball links are not Loctited. So grab yourself a little bit more Loctite, put a drop of Loctite on them, and Loctite these. I've seen a lot of people don't do that, and these come loose in flight. Very big no-no. So just go ahead, Loctite them, tighten it down, do your other one. Tighten it down. Let's Loctite this one, and then the head blade grip and head block part is done, and then we got to do the little arms. And all we have to do for the arms is just switch the bearings over and the little plastic keepers. So let's go ahead and lock this down, tighten it down. We'll just grab our rubbing alcohol, wipe off all the excess Loctite, wipe off the oil or the grease that we got on the head, and now our head block and blade grips are done. So now we're going to grab the old head block here, and you'll notice that there are these little screws here. They're going to be 1.5s. Go ahead and pull these apart. Everything on this helicopter is 1.5 to 2 millimeter. And the only thing that's 2.5 millimeter is the blade grip bolts. So now there's going to be on the LN or on the LP, there's going to be a little lock nut on the back of your head block. With the LM, you don't need that, but there is a little washer here. Let's see if I can get that to move out. You do need to make sure that that little washer goes back. So we have our bolt. Then we have a tiny, can't even get it, tiny little washer. That needs to go back. So we're going to set that aside. We're going to set our bolt aside next to the washer so we know that it needs to go back. Now these little bolts here are 1.27 millimeters. These little tiny, these little guys right here. Focus. Okay, these little guys right here are 1.27 millimeters. So we're just going to go ahead and unscrew these. Now we're not going to be using these screws because these are for plastic. They're coarse threaded. But with this arm, all we have to do is pull the screws out and we don't touch the bearings or nothing on this guy. So we're just going to set the screws aside. We don't need those. We're just going to pull the arm off. And now with this arm, it's like set in there. So you kind of got to grab it and like kind of twist like this, and this will come off. It can be a bite. It goes on the same way. Now it's giving me a hard time because I'm trying to do it on camera. There we go. So now you just got to twist it, pull off. So now the number, this is important as well. So you'll see the number 4 here. That needs to face outside. So no number goes towards the main shaft. 4 goes outside of the main shaft. So let's keep that in mind when we go to reassemble this. So next thing we got to do is just pop these bearings out. Super simple, just nice and easy. Pop them out. These are shoulder bearings, and there is a little washer inside. See that little washer? That has to go back. So they're shoulder bearings. So we got to make sure that the shoulder goes on the outside, just like it is here. Shoulder on the outside. So let's go ahead and pop this bearing out. So now we are done with this. If you broke one, you would just grab your new part and reassemble. So now we're going to go ahead and we are going to grab the one that is the right. Now here's the metal LM and there's the LP. They are thinner, but they're metal, so they don't have to be as thick. So now, if I remember correctly, yeah, it doesn't matter which one. So these two, we're going to take the screws out of this one, which are going to be the same size, 1.27 millimeter. And we're going to set these guys aside. We need these. And those have to be Loctited. It's a lot of little screws here. So now, let's grab our arms. And remember again, the Align logo is going to face out as well as the number 4. So when we go to assemble this, we're going to want the Align facing out. And you got to just kind of put this in there. And you got to grab it. I kind of put it in on an angle. And then it is not all that easy. I'm trying to do this where you guys can see and where I can see at the same time. Like that. So you just got to kind of put it in and twist. So now remember, Align facing out, number 4 facing out. So now we are going to take these little screws. Let's just finish this side up. And then we're going to put a dab of Loctite. Oop, I lost the screw. Here it is. So again, a little dab of Loctite. We don't need much. We can use the excess that's on the bottle here. Run these guys in here. Tighten it down. Same for this one. Remember, overusing Loctite is not as good either, because then you get it to go into the bearings, and I've seen it where it literally glues bearings together. Let me try to refocus this a little better. Here we go. So now we're going to run another screw into this side, tighten it down. Okay, and it should be nice and free. Make sure this one's tight enough. Yep, we just want to snug them down, nice and smooth and free. So now we're going to take one bearing, and we're going to put it in the back side. And we're going to want to make sure that that bearing goes in flat and straight, which it did not. So now we're going to just push that bearing in. So I don't know why it's being a pain. Come on, bearing. Don't give me a hard time. Oh, I dropped it. I found it. We're good. Try that again. We're going to push this bearing in. There we go. Snapped in, straight, it's good. So now we're going to take this little tiny washer here, which is really tiny. We're going to put it on the end of our driver, and we are going to drop that guy into here. So I don't know if you can see that, but there's a tiny little washer in there. So now one way you can do it to help keep that washer in place so it does not move is go ahead, put your bolt up. Push that wall. Okay, so now we got the bolt to hold the washer into place. And then we're going to take our other bearing and we are going to push it in this way. Make sure that this bearing goes in as well. And it can be a little bit of a pain, but you just got to push this guy until it pops. And now that bearing is in place. Sorry. All right, so now our bearings are in, our little washer is in. So now let's grab the head block again. Again, we don't need these screws. So let's grab the head block again. And we do need that little washer. We're going to look at it. So now if you notice on the head block, there's going to be a little raised side here. And this one goes, if I remember correctly, yeah. So there's a little raised side here. And this little raised side is where you're going to want this arm to be. So now we are going to put this screw into here, and I might have assembled this backwards. And I did. I need to flip this little arm around. Hold on 1 second. Okay, so I just flipped this guy around real quick. Same thing I did. But remember, 4 to the outside. And then on the head block, there's this little area right here. Get my little pointer. And this little raised area is what it's going to ride on. So we are going to take our 1.27 driver and no, this is a 1.5, I'm sorry. So we're going to take our 1.5 that runs this bolt, and we're going to go ahead and slide this through here, and then we are going to slide our little tiny washer back onto this side. And then for right now, because I'm not going to be sliding this back onto the main shaft yet, because this is a clamp style, I'm not going to Loctite this. Because once I go to put the head on, I will pull that bolt back out and Loctite it. But because I'm not going to put it on yet, I am not going to Loctite it. So now we got to do the same on the other side. Again, 1.27 driver. Let's go ahead and pull these 2 screws out. We got to disassemble the other side, and it is the exact same. So I'm not going to bore you guys with watching me do this for the next 5-6 minutes. So I'm going to get this one done, and I will be right back. Okay, so I just went ahead, did it off camera because it's the same exact thing I did on the other side, but just got this arm put in. Now remember again, the letter 4 goes towards the outside on both of them. 4 towards the outside, and the Align logo towards the outside. So now the head itself is completely done, exception of we need these little the little links from the blade grip to the swash plate. So we have 1 and we have 2, and now all of our LP parts are no longer needed. So again, with the links, in case you guys don't know, the ball links have a number on them and an A. So the A goes towards the outside. So now if we're installing this, it's because of the way the direction of the link itself is. So we have A here. We have the outside here, so it's going to go A towards the outside. And then now this is reversed because when we go to pop this on the swash plate, A will be towards the outside. So now we're going to grab our other link, again, A towards the outside. So now our head assembly itself is completely done. So I'm going to end this video off here. The next video will be doing the tail assembly. And then the next video will be switching out the little LM upgrade parts with the bearing blocks and all that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna end up putting these videos in, and not in series, but they'll be after each other, and then I will put them so you guys can find them if you need them. So I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this helps some of you guys. Again, if you're doing an LP, doesn't matter, LM, it's the head build is the same way. If you're building a new one, you can follow the same setup. So thank you guys so much for watching. Take care. Have a great day.